for the last couple of days since the NFC Championship game about what you think the NFL should do or what rules should be changed with the replay system in order to make sure what we saw at the NFC Championship game does not happen again. And we figured, you know what, let's get somebody from the competition committee itself on the phone line. And we are thrilled to have the Dallas Cowboys EVP, COO, Director of Player Personnel, Stephen Jones, here on the program. How are you, Stephen?
Hey, Rich, man, I'm doing great. Hope you're having a good week. And we're down here at the Senior Bowl having to move on since we're out of the tournament now and looking to make ourselves better.
Okay. Well, maybe we can revisit that in a second. I do want to hit on the subject du jour about the end of the NFC Championship game, and what do you think the general sense of things is from the management level, the ownership level, and the competition committee level that you represent all in one, Stephen?
Absolutely. Well, I think, when I first joined the committee, Rich, the one thing we learned right away is you don't make knee-jerk decisions and have knee-jerk opinions. And then the other term I learned early and often are the unintended consequences. I think, in general, obviously, you look at the call, obviously, that's in question. And certainly, it's a tough one. It's a tough one, obviously for the Saints. They certainly play that forward and see where they are in the Super Bowl right now and understand that. But at the same time, if you get into, the far-reaching consequences of that, which are, how do you insert pass interference into any type of a replay, it's a very judgmental call at the end of the day. And although that one to most appeared obvious, there's a lot of pass interference call because of the contact we have in our game, all the hand fighting that goes on down the field. It's a very judgmental call that's not always clear and obvious. It can certainly be that. It can certainly be a case made that there's, PI calls that aren't pass interference that, half the people think they are and half the people think they aren't. But, obviously we'll take a look as we do everything, and it deserves a long look. And a lot of provocative conversations will be had on, how to move forward with something like that. I think it was all a call that we, hate that was missed. At the same time, no one has more respect for our officials than myself. I mean, there's a lot of pressure put on them. There's 22 players out on that field. There's a lot of space. There's a lot of, contact that goes on in our game, which is expected. And, they have tough duties. So I have nothing but the utmost respect for them. It's our job, as a league, as a competition committee, to continue to improve and make our game better for our fans in terms of officiating. And it's our job to put them in better places. And I don't have the answer to that on my fingertips as we sit here today. I certainly look forward to sitting with them, with my fellow competition committee members, our NFL staff, and looking for ways to improve our football game.
Yeah, I'm sure Sean Payton, obviously he's on the committee. He'll be in the room. Have you had any conversations with him at all yet, Stephen?
I have not. I have let him certainly let this all kind of emotion or work its way as we all have in all these games. I mean, we were involved in we've been involved in games like that where, officiating can be contested. And certainly it's an emotional roller coaster that you go through. I think anybody who's been involved in the NFL and been involved in games probably at one time or another have had, calls that work your way and you have calls that work against you. But certainly when it's done, in these playoff games where, it's if you lose, you go home, then there's a lot more emotion involved. But, Sean's a very, very smart coach. He adds a lot to the committee. I know he'll have a lot of great ideas, as will the other members, as will our staff.
Well, I've got a good idea, Stephen Jones, if you don't mind me forwarding it to you.
Absolutely.
I've never been shy about
we're
it.
Always open to ideas and always open to, for ways to get better. So I'd love to hear yours.
Because I'd love to. Look, I understand the sensitivity on the front of the difficulty of the job. I mean, fans, if they're ever fortunate enough to get close to the field, just the guys are so big, they're so fast. It's remarkable that the calls are right as much as they are, okay? So I understand that,
Yep.
and I understand the crucible of the game, like it was at the end of the NFC Championship game. It's pressurized, but having replay as a safety net, to me, might take some of the pressure off, and certainly help in a situation like this one, which I think we can all agree we don't want to see anymore. And I also understand the sensitivity of having judgment calls folded into replay. That said, making everything reviewable. When I say everything, anything's reviewable. Anything, but you don't expand the number of challenges available to the coaches at all. So you don't extend the game. You do, however, maybe get more challenges made, which might extend the game, but it's not appreciably extended. And in the last 2 minutes, anything is reviewable by the booth and New York City, but it has to be, you would come up with some language clear. You used the word yourself earlier in this interview, clear and obvious. Any clear and obvious penalty can be reviewed in the last 2 minutes. What do you think?
Well, I just think it's something we should discuss. I'm sure it will be discussed. We've certainly heard this before. I think clear and obvious is the key. And how do you define clear and obvious? And because there's a lot of calls that people think are clear and obvious, depending on which side of the which team you're rooting for. To a Saints fan may be clear and obvious. To a Rams fan, may not. To a Cowboys fan, may be clear and obvious. To an Eagles fan, may not. And you just get when you get into judgment calls, that's what you get into. And I think if you hear smart people on broadcast, whether it's a Troy Aikman or a Joe Buck, whether it's Tony Romo and Jim Nantz, they're very knowledgeable about our game. And when they're having their conversations with the officials in the booth, there's differences of opinion there by very smart people as to what when there is replay, how it should go, or when there is a call, how it should go. So it's certainly something that's very difficult to get your hands around once you move past, once you get into the judgment calls like pass interference, holding, things of that nature. So, all these are very valid points. They're good points. They're all points that we will, I'm sure, have, a lot of discussion as it should be. And we all want the game to be better. We all want it to be better for our fans. We all want to get it right. We all want to put our officials in the very best possible position to get it right. And at the same time, we want to have great flow to our ball games. And, you can't, at the end of the day, you have to live with, we've been living with it in sports for forever, that there's going to be missed calls at times. And so those are all things that we have to measure, and we'll certainly be doing that in a big way in this off season. It's certainly, whenever you have a season, you have a lot of things a lot of questions that are raised that the competition committee has to address. Certainly, we'll have our hands full again this off season.
So we'll call it the Eisen rule. That'll be on the agenda, is what you're saying, essentially, Stephen?
Certainly, we'll take a look at it. I can assure you that that will come up, and it has before. It's certainly one that's you put a lot of thought into, and I must say I've heard it before.
Okay.
And, I think it's something that we'll obviously discuss.
Yeah, because it just closing a loophole that, look, as you point out, loophole, calling it that would be calling it that for the last century or plus in sports about officials who are humans and making calls or non-calls. I totally get it, but just closing up whatever possibly can happen that the NFC Championship game unfortunately drove through like a Mack truck in front of a huge American viewing public. Just closing that up, that's all I think many fans are looking for right now, Stephen.
I think the challenge, Rich, is just, are you doing that every play? Was that a pick? Was that an offensive holding, clear and obvious? Was that clear and obvious face mask? Was that a clear and obvious hit to the head? And then you're into the debate in New York, as to, is it clear and obvious? And it's every play. I mean, you go back and look at the final 2 minutes of the KC New England game. There's pick plays. There's pass interference. There's face masks. There's hits to the head or non-hits to the head. I mean, you get into you may not ever make it through the final 2 minutes, and that's without getting into when the TV goes to work on this. Was that guy holding? Was the defensive guy holding? Was the I mean, there's a case to be made that there's some form of a penalty on every play. These guys are coached to be physical and coached to push the limits. And we're talking about very skilled guys who are big and fast. And, you really question if that's what we really want.
Couple more minutes left with Stephen Jones here, Cowboys Executive Vice President. I'm going to front load this in case, let's say, and you and I have had a conversation off air about this, so I figured I'd bring it up now. In Super Bowl 53, a member of the Rams or the Patriots, so the Patriots don't usually do this because Belichick coaches against it, but member of the Rams or the Patriots reaches for the pylon with a ball, and it goes through the end zone, and the ball goes to the defense. What is the appetite of the competition committee to change this rule, Stephen Jones?
It's been gone in the past. It has been gone over extensively, and I think at the end of the day, it's strict liability on that runner to secure it. And if he fumbles before he gets it across the goal line, then that was his decision to be careless with the ball or take a chance to score a touchdown. And he has to make that decision. So we've made the decision not to change the rule in the past, but certainly, it comes up. And as far as I can remember, it comes up almost every year that we certainly look at 3 or 4 plays on that, because usually it happens a couple times a year. And we make sure that that's the stance that, that we want to keep.
Why? Why is that the consensus?
The ultimate opinion becomes it's strict liability on the runner to make that. It happened to us. Derek Carr went for the touchdown, and he reached for it, and he takes a chance at that point that he's going to fumble that ball, and it's going to go through the end zone. And if he secures the ball, then he has to line up the next play. He'll end up probably a yard short, and it's their job to get the ball in on the next play.
Okay. You know where I stand on it.
I know where you stand. By the way,
yes.
That's what's great about our game. That's what's great about our fans is everyone certainly has opinions. And by the way,
yes.
as you well know, there's a lot of differing opinions in the room. It's a lot of times it's not unanimous, and you certainly have people on both sides of the coin, if you will, or the equation. Some want it, some don't want something in terms of a specific rule. So the good news is it's well thought out. As you know, what the competition committee makeup is, it's made up of coaches, GMs, owners, et cetera, in terms of, looking at what's in the best interest of our game. And certainly we understand that people don't always agree. The fans don't always agree. Owners within the room don't agree with the committee. And within the committee, you have certainly disagreement. So it's very fair.
Okay, Stephen, just a couple quick hitters on the Cowboys, if you don't mind, before letting you go. When do you think you might have an announcement on the offensive coordinator for your team?
I think as we move forward, we're obviously at this point pretty comfortable with what we have internally. But we have our coaches, as it turns out, are down at the Pro Bowl. Coaching the Pro Bowl. So we're going to have some meetings this week down there. We're going to move from the Senior Bowl to the Pro Bowl, and then we'll obviously all convene back next week. But I would think by next week we'll be making a final decision on that.
Okay. And I don't know if you were aware of what Cole Beasley was tweeting out yesterday about management deciding who gets the football in an offensive scheme, Stephen.
I would hope that's just his frustration, but certainly not at all the case. I mean, we don't get involved in that. We do, the only thing we ever do is decide to tell you if we're going to, pay players a lot of money or we're going to trade for players and give up big picks, that we certainly hope that they would be involved. If we're going to do things like that there's a reason we're doing it, that they're going to be involved, but we would never dictate where balls go or things of that nature in terms of the game plan and getting involved with what our coaching staff does to get ready to play a ball game.
And lastly,
certainly Cole, and certainly of all people, Cole's always involved in getting balls and getting catches, and he's been just an integral part of what we're about. And certainly he made a lot of big catches and key catches in games that we've won and had success with. And
lastly, Dak and Zeke, are they up for renegotiating right now? or
Well, there's a
extending?
group, we certainly, those are all guys that we want to be on our team long term. And we'll be working with a handful of really top-end players that we have on our team this year. I think it's well documented between DeMarcus Lawrence, between Amari Cooper, between Byron Jones and Dak and Zeke, that all those players are players that we want to be wearing a Cowboy uniform for years to come. So there'll certainly be a methodical process that we'll work through with them and their agents, and certainly some timing involved with all the above. But we intend to keep all those guys in terms of their long-term future with the Cowboys.
Well, Stephen, we had Jalen Smith on NFL Game Day Morning Championship Sunday. What a great human being that guy is. I mean, you struck it with him and so many other guys that you and the staff and your dad have drafted there. And the Cooper trade for the first-round pick, you got a lot of heat for the first-round pick, and he just absolutely was dynamite. So congrats on all those moves panning out and getting the NFC East championship this year for sure.
Well, thank you. We want to take that next step and, be talking. Hopefully we'll be playing football in the future this time of year as well. We've got a good young team, and we're certainly optimistic, but we have to get better and hopefully improve on what we did last year. But great being on with you, Rick.
Thanks for the call, Stephen. Really appreciate it. That's Stephen Jones, Cowboys Executive Vice President from the Senior Bowl, which you can, by the way, watch on NFL Network Saturday, right here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.